So you ever wonder what really separates a good endurance race from an absolutely incredible one? It's not just about having more grit or training harder. Nope, it's really about physiology. And today, we're going to treat your performance like an engineering problem, a puzzle that you can actually solve if you have the right data.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with that moment everyone dreads, hitting the wall. Then we'll cover how to fuel in the days leading up, that big pre-race meal debate, what to do during the race, how to handle gut issues, and finally, we'll tie it all together at the data-driven finish line.
Okay, first up, hitting the physiological wall. You know the feeling, right? Every endurance athlete absolutely dreads it. It feels like someone just pulls the plug, a complete energy shutdown. But what is actually happening inside your body when that happens?
So why do we hit the wall? Well, the first thing to get straight is that this isn't some kind of mental weakness. No way. It's a real and honestly a very predictable physical thing that's happening. So if we're going to solve this, the very first piece of the puzzle we need is to figure out what exactly is running out.
And the answer, the culprit, is a little molecule called muscle glycogen. Now you should think of this stuff as the premium high-octane fuel that's stored right in your muscles and your liver. It's the go-to energy source. When you're pushing hard, I mean really going for it in a race, this is what your body is burning through like crazy.
And here's the most crucial data point of all. That fuel tank, it's got a limit. For most trained athletes, you've got about 90 to 120 minutes of hard, sustained effort before those glycogen stores are basically running on empty. And once they're gone, well, that's it. Your performance doesn't just dip, it falls off a cliff. That is the wall.
All right, section 2, fueling in the days before. So if we want to avoid hitting that wall, the logic is pretty simple, right? We need to start the race with more fuel in the tank. But here's the key. That process doesn't start on race morning. Nope. It starts days, even a couple of days beforehand.
Look at this table. This isn't just some vague advice. It's about precise, calculated numbers based on how much you train. And the data is crystal clear. The harder and longer you train, the more carbs you need. You can see it scales right up. For those doing really high volume training, we're talking a massive 8 to 12 grams of carbs for every single kilogram of your body weight, every day.
Now let's zoom in on that number, 8 to 12 grams per kilogram. This is your target for what's called carb loading, and you want to hit this in that critical window about 36 to 48 hours before your race. Now, to put that into perspective, for a 70-kilo athlete, that's about 154 pounds. We're talking about eating up to 840 grams of carbs in a single day. That is a lot of pasta.
So, is all that eating worth it? Oh, absolutely. Look at this number. A proper, by-the-book carb load can boost your muscle glycogen stores by a staggering 50 to 70%. Let me say that again. 50 to 70% more fuel than you normally have. You're literally showing up to the start line with a much, much bigger gas tank. Okay, but there's a really interesting catch here that a lot of people miss. Storing all that glycogen isn't, well, it's not free. Here's the deal. For every single gram of glycogen your body packs away, it needs to grab about 3 grams of water to store it with. That's why being super hydrated while you carb load is absolutely critical. And it also explains why you might see the scale go up a pound or two before the race. Don't panic. It's not fat. It's your fuel and the water that comes with it.
All right, section 3, the pre-race meal debate. So your big fuel tanks are topped off, but now we're in the hours right before the race. What do you eat? This is where you hear a ton of conflicting advice, a lot of debate, and frankly, a lot of confusion.
So a lot of that debate comes down to this one concept, the glycemic index, or GI. And the idea is pretty simple. You've got your low GI foods, like oatmeal, that give you a slow, sustained release of energy. Then you have high GI foods, like, say, a bagel, that give you a really quick spike of energy. So the big question for athletes has always been, which one is actually better for performance on race day?
Well, to get a real answer, we have to look at the best evidence we have. And that's something called a meta-analysis, where scientists take a bunch of different studies and pool all their data together. And what they found is kind of surprising. This quote says it all. There was no clear benefit. Basically, despite all the theories, when you look at all the data combined, there's just no consistent proof that a low GI meal helps you perform better than a high GI one. The real key? Just make sure you get enough carbs, period.
Okay, section 4, fueling during the race. The gun goes off. You're feeling good, your glycogen stores are topped up, but that clock is ticking. Every minute you're out there, you're burning through that precious fuel. So, what does the data say about how to refuel while you're on the move?
And this leads to one of the most fascinating and honestly kind of weird questions in sports science. Can you actually boost your performance without swallowing a single calorie? Believe it or not, the data says, yeah, you can. Check this out. One study found that cyclists who just rinsed their mouths with a carb drink and then spit it out improved their performance in a 40K time trial by over 1%. That's a huge margin. The idea is that you're tricking your brain. Receptors in your mouth send a signal that says, hey, fuel's coming, and your brain reduces your sense of fatigue, even though you never actually swallowed anything.
Okay, that mouth rinse trick is cool for shorter stuff, but for anything over an hour or so, you absolutely have to start taking in actual fuel. And when you do, the tonicity of your drink, basically how concentrated it is, really matters. You've got 3 types. Hypotonic is really watery, so it's all about fast hydration. Isotonic is balanced, giving you both fluid and fuel. And then hypertonic is super concentrated. It's designed to deliver the most carbs possible, but it takes longer for your body to absorb. Right, Section 5, Solving GI Distress. Of course, anyone who's ever tried to down a gel during a hard race knows the real challenge isn't just getting the fuel in, it's getting your stomach to cooperate. So let's look at the data behind that dreaded GI distress.
So, what's causing all this trouble? Well, it's a few things. First, your body is smart. It sends blood away from your stomach to your working muscles. Then there's the mechanical side, especially in running, where everything is just bouncing around. And of course, what you eat matters. Too much fat, fiber, or super concentrated drinks can be a disaster. But the data also gives us solutions. The big one is to train your gut by practicing with your race day nutrition. And here's a pro tip from the science. Use fuels that have different types of carbs, like both glucose and fructose. They use different doorways to get into your system, which means you can absorb more fuel with less stomach upset.
Okay, here we are, Section 6, the data-driven finish line. We've talked about carb loading, pre-race meals, fueling on the go, all these numbers and strategies. But the big question, the only one that really matters, is this. Does all this sciencey stuff actually make you faster? Does it matter at the finish line?
And the answer is a resounding yes. This table is maybe the most important takeaway of all. Researchers looked at a bunch of marathon runners and ran the numbers to see what actually predicted their finish time. Now, no surprise, how often they trained was a huge deal. But get this, even after you account for all that training, 2 things still stood out as major predictors of a faster time. How much fluid they took in per hour and how many carbs they took in per hour. This is the smoking gun, folks. It's direct, numerical proof that your fueling strategy has a real, measurable impact on your performance.
So at the end of the day, it all boils down to this. The data, the numbers we've been looking at, they're not just for a textbook. They're a real-world, evidence-based game plan for turning what you think are your limits into your next personal best. It's about taking all this science and translating it directly into speed. So I'm going to leave you with this final question. Your performance isn't just random. It's an equation. Are you fueling it with the right data? Because when you shift from just guessing and doing what you've always done to a truly data-driven approach, you stop just hoping for a better performance. You start engineering it.